Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it. We'll talk about it inside. Scrappers, today is April 19th, 2023. Hopefully many of you got your taxes in by yesterday. Whee! Another tax season here and gone, and hopefully the scrap treated you well last year, and maybe you'll get a little bit of a kickback, but normally you don't want too much money back. This way you're just kind of moving on. But anyway, what's going on with the markets? April has been a relatively calm month. And it was funny, I was writing the weekly report this morning, and I was thinking about how I can take an average of all of the different percentage changes from copper to platinum to palladium to steel markets, aluminum, nickel, how I could roll those all together. And I'm going to work on figuring out how the overall markets change week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, and give you an overall feeling of the markets. But week to week approach, if you were to ask me the question this time, everything was pretty even. There was some ups, there were some downs, there were some evens. So let's start with gold. Why not? Gold prices continue to be over $2,000 an ounce, change week over week, less than 0.5%. We've had gold prices around 2025 to 2050 per ounce. So of course that's going to affect your electronic scrap. So gold prices unchanged really week over week. A lot of people are a little fearful that these markets are still overinflated. And I talked about something in this week's report, which I really don't talk about often, and that's kind of Wall Street and stock earnings. And what I've seen right now is so far the earnings that have started to come out have still continued to be strong. So strong earnings generally mean that larger companies are still making money. But what I'm really interested in is what a lot of their forecasting for the balance of 2023 is. And a lot of people are continuing to say that they expect to have 1% to 2% profit decreasing for the balance of the year. And while that may not sound like a lot, these bigger companies that are producing tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of product, if not billions, when you look at some companies like Apple, those 1% to 2% decreases will affect the markets, because that means demand is starting to be decreased. And I'll give you an example. I was reading an article on Apple the other day, and they were talking about their iPhones and how a lot of people are just keeping the iPhones that they have and not upgrading year to year. Why is that important? Well, these products are not changing so rapidly as they were 10 years ago. So now you get an iPhone, my dad has an iPhone 12 and I think we're on like 14 or something, and it's fine. The phone works. It opens the internet. It tells him the weather. He checks his stocks. He checks his email, right? And that's what many people do with their phones. So going to spend $1,000 on a new phone every year or every other year, people don't need to do that anymore. So they're keeping them longer and longer. They're also buying a lot of phones that are refurbished on the markets. Well, iPhones and other devices have gold, aluminum, lithium inside of them, on top of a couple of other different metals, including copper. So if they're not being recycled as often, that means that the demand is going to eventually start to taper off. And that's what we've seen over the last few years, as technology had a rapid increase in the 2010 to 2020 period. And now we're really seeing great technology continuing to become greater, but it's not like you're going from okay to great. You're going from great to greater. And a lot of these products are there, which means they're not going to be recycled as often, and they're not going to go back into the supply, which means companies are not going to have as many sales. And these are some of the things that I look at on a commodities side of things to give you a better idea on the markets. So I briefly mentioned copper. Copper prices are even week over week. Good news is we saw them go up and down the same amount week to week. Copper's trading at $4.04 at the time that we're recording this. At one point a few days ago, it got up to $4.17, but we quickly saw 14 cents come off in a matter of 3 trading days. So those are the things that scrapyards look for before they just raise their prices when copper bounces up 5 cents or down 5 cents. My scrapyard has had pretty stable prices for like 4 weeks now, because while we've had really quick ups, we've had really quick downs, and that 404 could quickly become 390 in the same breath that it went up to 417. So these are things that we look for. So copper unchanged week over week gives you a certainty and a more firm pricing on what you're going to get at the yard. So another positive thing, because we like stability in the scrap world, right? I've said this before. Stable prices are good prices. Erratic prices, whether they go up too quick or down too quick, hurt people. You know, scrap yards, you would say, Tom, how would prices going up too quickly hurt someone? Well, if a scrap yard normally sells 40,000 pounds of copper at a time, and they lock a price in and it goes up 50 cents, and they still have to fill that 40,000 pounds, well, they're not going to overpay people 50 cents a pound more because their profit margin isn't that big. Regardless of what people say online, scrapyards are not making 50 cents a pound on copper, right? So if that happened, they need to fill that 40,000 pound order. Legally, it's a contract, right? It's called a copper contract. So that's what would happen. But if the prices go down really quickly, right now, a scrapyard, they may underpay. Now you're getting a price less than you think that you would, but it's based on current market prices. These are things that get played, and it's really hard to balance these. That's why it's really important to follow the markets, and that's why you're watching this, today, and hopefully every week you tune in. What else is going on? Aluminum prices up about 5.5% on the trading level, but we did start to see some decrease on the scrap side of things, more due to an oversupply at different mills opposed to a lack of demand. And the same goes for stainless steel. Nickel prices have increased. Stainless prices have decreased, and a couple of things I'd like to point out on the nickel and the stainless side of things. 304 stainless, we saw prices a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, 35 to 45, 48 cents a pound for 304 stainless steel. Well, today the price is more like 30 to 35 cents. What's happened? Oversupply, lack of production. And one of the big things that I talked to a stainless steel recycler on a larger scale the other day, they were talking about the size of the pieces and how labor prices have become more expensive. Cutting things has become harder, and stainless steel isn't an item that scrapyards can just put into their shear and just cut it. Believe it or not, stainless is a lot stronger than many grades of steel. So the scrapyard just can't use their shears to cut it to size. So my scrapyard, for instance, we don't cut down stainless steel. We don't have a plasma cutter. We don't have a shear that's for that. Stainless really destroys the blades on the shear. Think about a pair of scissors in your house, right? That's what a shear is. So a single piece of paper you could cut really easy. We'll put 50 pieces of paper together. You may be able to start to get a little cut on it, but are you going all the way through cleanly? No, you're not. And that's kind of what happens on the scrapyard side. Their shears can cut a thin piece easily, but once it gets thicker, the gauge increases. It's harder to prepare it. So now larger processors are having to cut these pieces down, and they're charging scrapyards like my own an additional 3 cents a pound, or they're taking it off of our price. And when they take that off of our price, we get less money for our stainless, which means we can pay less money for the stainless. So if I was going to give you any idea on how to make more money on stainless, have your pieces below 4 feet, kind of like a steel, right? I always say prepared steel, 4 feet and less. So have your pieces cut down to 4 feet or less, and ask your scrapyards if they have a different price for prepared versus unprepared stainless. Those are really big questions. And it's not one that I can answer you, because some scrapyards just buy it and they bale it and they ship it out. They don't care about the size. Some scrapyards are selling it in smaller quantities, 5 to 10,000 pounds at a time. Some scrapyards are just hoarding it right now because they think the prices are too low. So these are other things to look for. One thing that could be really positive about the stainless market is that a lot of these EV producers and different electric car or truck or electronic people are starting to use nickel more and more in their batteries. Why is that important? It creates a new avenue for materials to be used. The recycling of nickel now can go into the batteries as well as a new grill or a new refrigerator. And that's where lead has been hurt so much, because lead prices, while they're still very strong, soft lead, 50, 60 cents a pound, you can get at the scrapyard, but battery prices are poo-poo, because the battery market, the lead market, right, has decreased because there's not lead batteries in electric vehicles or electric bikes or electric cars or trucks or anything like that. So the lead market had an arm kind of sliced off because they can't use it in vehicles as much as they would, where nickel markets have had a new opening to be able to supply the auto industry with the nickel product, help create more of a flow. So that could be something that could pick up in the coming years. But again, things that we're looking for, and we talk about them day to day. This way you learn about them long term. Catalytic converter markets. So before I talk about the catalytic converter markets, I'm going to go over and do my scrap story of the week. It seemed like everyone loved the statue last week, so that was really cool to see. So I'm going to tell you about a story that happened about 4 years ago, 2019 or so. Rockaway Recycling is not a car buyer. We don't have junk cars. We don't do parts and things like that. But one day we had a guy pull into the yard in a box truck, 24-foot box truck, lift gate, beautiful tires on it, a little rough inside the cab. And he goes, "I'd like to sell this for scrap." Now, he drove it to us. It was fully passed inspection. There was really no problems. And I looked at it and I said, okay, I'm going to buy this today, right? Knowing that I'm not going to go and scrap it or break it down for parts. Fast forward to today, we still use that box truck. 4 years in, we continue to use the box truck. We didn't have to replace the clutch. Just the tires alone were worth about $3,000. And I think we paid like $1,500 for the box truck at the time. Put a little spit shine on it. We wrapped it with some Rockaway Recycling stuff all around it, repaired some holes, had it degreased, had a fresh coat of paint put on it. 4 years later, we're continuing to use that. And it's just kind of cool because I woke up that morning not expecting to get a new vehicle for the fleet. At the end of the day, we had a new box truck. It was manual, 5-speed. It would have been a little nicer if it was automatic nowadays, but the lift gate worked and the floor was in good shape. And I'd love to hear some of the stories about, vehicles that you've either bought in scrap or you've gotten for scrap, and that you may still be using. I see a lot of people posting things, and I know that there's a lot of reuse. And that's a cool part of this industry. There's things that you can reuse sometimes. And it was just something that, clean title, added it to the policy. And here we are 4 years later, we're continuing to use the box truck. We will be putting it into semi-retirement later on in 2023, because we should have a new truck coming in that is automatic, that is stronger, that has better fuel. But we're not going to scrap it. We're going to keep it as a backup vehicle because, you really can't get, it's nice having backup vehicles. I've seen a lot of your stories where my truck broke down, but good thing I still have my old reliable one. And it's kind of what we do in the scrap industry too. If you look at a lot of scrap yards, they don't really get rid of their vehicles, their equipment. I know a couple of friends of mine that take their old trucks that are no longer, roadworthy and they won't pass, and they just use them in the yard to move material around. I know a guy that's using a truck from 1972 with this specialized back that he put on, and they just drive it less than a mile a day, picks up stuff over here, dumps it over there. So it's cool to see that in the scrap world, and it's cool to see the stories that scrappers have as well. So catalytic converters, week over week, 7% increase. Let me say that again. Catalytic converter OEM national average, 7% increase week over week. Why? Platinum prices up 9%. Palladium prices up 12%. Rhodium prices up 3%. Right? So you smush all of that together and your average OEM cat is up 7% week over week. We have a really cool promotion at rrcats.com for first-time customers selling $175 of OEM cats. They're getting $25 bonuses along with the 10-day price lock guarantee, free shipping on all OEM catalytic converters. But these markets are really strong. It's been nice to see an increase in the first part of April. We're hoping that the next few days continue to go strong. Before we recorded this, rhodium was up another $300 an ounce, and prices stabilized 3 days in a row. That's really important. So if you're looking to learn more about the catalytic converter markets, whether it's prices, averages, rrcats.com not only has that and the free quoting, they also have newsletters that goes out. You get iScrap newsletters like this one, but we also have ones for different segments of our different branches to give you more information. So check that out as well. But really nice, strong prices on the cat side. One fear that I have is that as we move more towards electric, the current administration talked about half of vehicles by 2030 that are going to be produced, they want them to be electric. What does that mean? A large decrease in the demand for the precious metals, platinum, palladium, and rhodium, because you're going to have less catalytic converters being installed into vehicles, kind of like they eliminated the lead acid batteries from cars. They're going to eliminate catalytic converters, but there is good news because they're repurposing a lot of these catalytic converters to pack more material into the cat to offset a lot of the emissions. A lot of the larger companies that are making new factories, while they're doing a lot of things on the renewable side, they still need these catalysts to capture a lot of the toxic materials that may escape into the air. So, they're not going away, but their value may be suppressed until they have a new opening, whether it's in the electronics world or somewhere else. So just things to look for on the catalytic converter side of things. Overall, markets are really good. Steel market is one of the only ones that I would say has decreased in the month of April. That's why I said kind of week over week. Overall, scrap prices are even, but we did see another decrease in the steel prices of about 15 to 20 bucks per ton. That's in addition to the $15 per ton that we saw happening in March. So unfortunately, those problems are going to persist. What I don't like about a $35 overall price drop in the last 6 weeks, we're going into the month of May, June, July, and August. Those are traditionally the busiest months of the year because you're going into a season where people are going on vacations, which means a lot of buildings and schools are going to start to get worked on. More scrap generally gets produced during the spring and summer months, just because the weather opens up, especially in parts of the country that get bombarded with snow and cold weather. These 6 months of the year from kind of April to October are the busier months for a lot of demo companies, a lot of recyclers, because they want to get materials out. So with prices depressed going into the summer, I'm not overly optimistic that we're going to see a large increase. And on top of that, they're talking about oil prices continuing to go up 7 to 10% from now, April 19th, through the 4th of costs, fuel, diesel, gas, etc. So I'm not overly optimistic about steel prices increasing. So when you look at my recommendations on holding or selling material, continue to sell your lighter grades. I've now heard from multiple people the last few weeks telling me that they have now purchased secondary trailers that they keep at their house with tarps on them for their light iron. So when they're taking things apart, it goes onto the trailer. They're not just throwing 300 or 400 pounds loose in the back of their pickup truck. They're now saving 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pounds to save. It's not for them to make more money. And a few people have said it's because of my recommendation through these videos: save more material, save more fuel, invest in a tool like a trailer, right? That you can save this stuff. So when you go to the scrapyard, it's more worth your time. You get more money, but you save time. What's that time versus money comparison? You got to figure out what your time is worth. And this is just one of those places where light iron, continue to move it through. Maybe things like rotors and heavy prepared cast you want to save, but that gives you kind of an idea on where the steel markets are and how the oil prices are going to affect them going into the summertime. So I'd love to hear your stories, your ideas, your questions. Please comment below. Let us know what you want to think. If you're looking for more information, please become one of our YouTube members, where you have access to member-only videos that help teach you more about how to make more money, where to find better access to scrap, and just overall how you can increase your scrapping productivity. So check that out as well. Scrappers, today is Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. My name is Tom. Look forward to hearing from you. Until next week, I'll scrap you later.
Thanks for checking out this scrap video. For more exclusive scrap video content, please become a YouTube member of our channel today. Thank you, and I'll scrap you later.